I realize that we are live, but that also means that I don't think anyone's here. So, gonna get things set up from a camera standpoint. I want to say, let's see if I flip this. There we go. This is what I'm hoping for, right here. Probably move it out of the sun. Get things set up here. Okay, here we go. So we're gonna go get the turkey. We're gonna pull that out and get this out of here. Okay. So question is, what are we working with? And I have no idea. I've never done this before. I've never taken a turkey out. This is $20 worth of turkey. It seems pretty pliable. I actually do want it a little bit cold so that as we're carving it, we're taking all the bones out of it. That we'll be able to, just, I don't know, whatever. So I'm going to flip this around just in case there's any chat. Can't even see who's in here either, which is interesting. But we're gonna be cutting this turkey loose. So one thing that I will say, it probably, when you're selecting what type of knife you want to clean your turkey with, I have a couple different knives because there are a couple different jobs that are being done here. So right now I'm just cutting her loose from all the netting. So we can get this turkey out and we'll get to work on it. Cut her loose out of the bag. And the other thing I would say is you want a good sharp knife. I don't know if you've ever tried to clean any type of animal before, but holy cow. If you do not have a sharp knife, it's just a battle, just a constant battle. And you don't necessarily want to fight with this. I want to be able to get nice, smooth, easy cuts. And I've got a sharpener, which honestly is a huge help. I'm not trying to slosh any of this turkey juice anywhere here, and I've got my pan underneath in order to contain a lot of that. See how this goes. I'm gonna go transfer this to the sink real quick. Then once it's going to the trash after that. So really what I am gonna do with this turkey is I'm gonna be taking it and deboning. Okay? So we're gonna start on the back and work all the way around. I need another pan for all of these extras here because I've never made a demi-glaze, but I am gonna make a demi-glaze with this. So we've got necks, we got the neck, got giblets, all sorts of things that need their own pan right now. I got this commercial that I want to break free, so I'm stuck in my head. I also got this plastic piece here. That comes out. And I think, for the most part, the only thing we have left in the actual cavity is ice. So you're going to get transferred for 1 minute. I'm going to get rid of a lot of this water. And then we're going to come back and we're going to get to work. So one of the questions you may be asking yourself is like, why on earth would anybody take a bird like this and cut it down so that it doesn't have any bones. Well, one of the things that I'm thinking about when I'm working on this here is the fact that normally a bird like this is going to take about 8 hours to cook, whereas when I'm actually doing it this way, it's going to take about an hour. So again, what I'm doing is I'm finding that backbone and I'm working down along that backbone. Inside scapula, you got scapula on both sides here, okay? So I'm going to work inside that, and I'm really trying to get that meat right up against the ribs. And you can cut right into the ribs because the ribs are pretty sturdy bones there. You're not going to have any problem with that. But really what we're trying to do is we're going to peel this turkey completely out of here, okay? Just sharpen these the other night. And because not a ton of meat here in the turkey, it's more of a thigh bird than it is a glute animal. One thing I do agree, I watched Adam do this earlier, is that if you don't understand the anatomy of a turkey or an animal, I think you're going to struggle with this a little bit, because you basically are taking this and flaying all the skin, all this meat off the bone. And if you don't know where the bones are, you don't know what the bones are, you don't know the anatomy of the animal, I don't know really how you're going to be able to take this and make the decisions about what to cut, where to cut, how long, how deep to go, all of that information. So probably maybe brush up on your turkey anatomy. That could be something that you're working on. But I will say this, one thing that Adam didn't talk about that I do think is super important is the temperature of your meat. And I would say that this just gives you, it's a little bit more rigid. It's a very delicate meat to begin with, the turkey is. Now, the only spot here that I need to break through is I've got a joint here, and then I also got a hip joint. And that hip joint is going to be right back here, located at this spot. Adam took his, okay, and used kitchen shears to just break that loose. Honestly, if you know the anatomy of a turkey well enough, you should be able to get into that joint, which it is a ball joint in both of those applications, and you should be able to free meat up all the way around it, get into the center of it once you're there, and pop that sucker loose. The only thing that you're cutting loose there are going to be ligaments. If you know anything about the actual joint, it's not that hard to get in and figure out which ligament needs to be broken loose. But again, like, you've got to know the anatomy of the turkey to be able to peel this loose. One downside of it being cold is that your hands get cold quickly. Maybe I just need a bowl of warm water to rinse my hands off on occasion. It's the first time I've ever gone live. I see we've actually got 3 people watching now. I did enable the chat, but I think because it's being filmed on my phone, not iPhone, on my phone, I have no idea. So right here is our first joint. Down here, you can see we've cut the joint capsule away from that. There's actually a bulb that sits down into the hip here. And as I work the meat off the ribs, you can see I'm sliding right along the ribs here. And honestly, if you do this right, if you get through the fascia at the right spot, most of the meat should just peel off. So my real question is, right on that joint, getting into the turkey glute right here, small as it may be, cutting away that support from that ball joint. Great song. And the nice part too is you're going to get 2 runs at this. You got one side of the turkey, and then you go all the way around to the other side of the turkey, and I also think a smaller, shorter blade is easier to work with. Look at that, it's a hip joint, really well. Can't hear me. What? You know what? Do I have... Who's trying to watch you, Dad?
Yeah. True supporters.
That size turkey should take 4 hours, not 8 hours, but 1 is much better. I agree. So I can actually see the chat on that. Let's reverse. Maybe I'll reverse the, oh, there's the chat button. I'm an idiot. Look, I'm learning with everybody here. There it is. Maybe that's the problem. I have maybe the volume turned down. Okay, I turned volume all the way up. Let me know if that changes anything for anyone. I think I can also get this up and further away. Maybe. So I can see what's going on in here as well. All right, let's see what the chat says. Okay, there we go. Okay, good. Glad that the volume changed for everyone. I had that turned down on my phone. So what we're doing at this point is we're trying to take this bird and we're trying to basically take all of the meat off of any bones. Bones are what inhibit, how quickly you're going to be able to cook your bird. So I'm working through a couple of joints right now, which I can see the ball joint here. And my question is, I'm not sure the best way, especially with a turkey, that I can work through that. The other thing, I don't think, has anybody ever seen anybody take a turkey and flay all of the meat off of the bone? I have never heard of anything like that. Here is my ball joint. Come on, pop loose, old girl. A few more ligaments there. A few more ligaments there. You know what I could use, honestly, would be like a pair of pliers. But I am curious. We got leverage is one of the things that we all work with, right? If I get in here and, 100%. Okay, pop that loose. You can see that ball joint just popped out there. Now I'm gonna go up here to my shoulder joint. Boom, 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 boom. That starts right here. Interesting. You can also snip some of the flesh away from this too, which is pretty interesting. And then there's that joint. That does just allow me to get a little bit more leverage. Open that up. And then I am, in this case, snipping through any ligaments that are there to get this loose. Bunch of ligaments in that shoulder. You know what's disappointing is you can't film all this and put it on time lapse like I normally do. You actually have to sit through the narrative and the real time. So now we're cut through all of that. All just fascia that we're removing here. I don't really know if it matters whether or not you can actually see this, but this is going to be into turkey breast right here, and I need to cut back through all of this to make sure that we keep as much of the meat as possible, because we're trying again to stay right along the bone. Maybe that's why I'm using a longer knife in some of these scenarios to guide yourself right along that bone. That's just cavity. Oh, I just am blown away at how smooth this is coming off of the bone here. If I'm going to be critical, I would say Adam's didn't look this smooth, honestly. And I don't know whether the biggest difference was that his turkey was warm, but I am trying to find, like here's a bone, and you can see just how easily that's sliced off there. Okay, so all the way down there, coming around. And we're working towards the breastbone on the other side. That's what we're working towards at this point. We're trying to keep, there we go. And that's flayed off. So that is, man, I'm more impressed with myself than what I saw Adam do even there. So I'm gonna actually go back and I'm gonna work the other side and we're gonna work it back around. And then we're gonna try and peel the rest of that off. I'm gonna set this in a bowl over here. Warm my hands back up just a little bit. It's kind of like when you go out and you've been playing in the snow for a while and you come back in. I don't know how many adults play in the snow, but you know what I mean. Well, if you're from South Africa, you're not playing in the snow at all, are you? But if you're outside, your hands are cold, you come back in and warm them up. Put them under hot water and it just burns. That's what I'm getting right there. So again, I'm just trying to follow this line right along the backbone. And I'm just trying to preserve as much skin as I can. And then I'm going to work right down into meat on this side in an effort to get that to start to release. And we're just flaying that back. Again, you got to remember that meat really exists in bags which are wrapped with fascia. Fascia is that white stringy material that you see, okay, when you're carving anything, or for example, if you've been hunting and you've come home and you've got an animal that you're cleaning, if you can find the fascial lines, okay, it will carve. In this case, we call it carving, but it will bone really easily. And I like to give it some nice pressure on the back side. You probably can't see this very well, but I'm getting underneath that shoulder blade again. And I'm going to be working to this shoulder joint up here. So cutting around the neck, working to the shoulder joint. And I've got scapula right there, so you can see scapula comes back into there. I don't know if Adam actually cleaned the scapula out of his. Let's clean scapula out on one side here. I mean, obviously he did. He's trying to take all of the bones out, so Adam 1, Jim 0 there. That could be part of my issue. Working to my joint, it's going to be over here. I am going to eventually flay that off. All right. There are a ton of videos on YouTube on like how to clean animals. And for example, if you shot a deer or something like that, or there's a ton of videos on people doing that type of work. Okay, so there we are through there. Taking all the meat off my scapula here. And I'm working down into my ball joint, which is again down into this corner. And I can see that. I'm going to go ahead and take my kitchen shears and I'm going to leverage Alexa, turn Roku off. Maybe a little less background noise will help. Okay. Okay, so that's popped loose. You can get into that joint. So again, why are we doing this? We are trying to get this down so that I can cook a turkey in an hour. I got friends coming over. They want to have turkey with us. You know, it's not going to take me very long. Pop that loose. That joint is out. I will say this, the one thing that is a little bit awkward as I'm doing this is it's backwards now. The whole anatomy of everything that I was working through before was in the opposite direction. So now I've worked down into this joint here. So again, we've got hip joint here. You can see hip joint was on the other side. So I'm gonna work just a little bit more of this meat off the bone behind the hip joint. And then going in with kitchen shears again, finding that joint right into the ball. One major tendon right in the center of it. That's loose. Cleaning that off. Boy, and we are darn close. I will say this, I think I made a mistake and that I was a little rough on the ribs before I got to this point, and had I not been so rough, perhaps this would have a little bit more structure. I think structure is obviously something, and boy, I can just see the fascial netting down through here. I keep missing text messages over and over again. But you can see the fascia is this white stringy material that is right in here, and this will separate, okay, right along that. Now we're trying to get into breast meat here. So I am trying to follow that line, okay? Nice thing is usually when you're working an animal like this, you're dealing with, you know, guts and all of that stuff. Not in this scenario because we've gotten all this broken loose. I need to get in here. Actually, I didn't pop that ball joint in. My bad, I thought we were already done with that. You can see the joint is open here, but we need to get that off of the shoulder. And get right down in the middle of that. And again, this is my first time doing this. I already took one of the, working the shoulder off of there before I actually wanted to and leaving it on the carcass. So I'm actually okay with that. Oh no, okay. Okay, we're working this out, down and out, down and out, down and out. And we're following, I'm carving right along that actual sternum of the turkey now. I will say this, a nice thing about having this in a pan, I'm containing the mess. And I'm also, you know, have the ability to move it back and forth as we work through all of this. So again, working meat off the sternum here. We're trying to preserve the skin and all that as much as possible. You gotta be delicate with that. But again, boy, we are right there. Really helps to have a knife that is super sharp. If you can think about it, when you actually carve a bird over the holidays, this is right down in that area that you are usually cutting this direction to get meat off of the bone. So we're going opposite direction. And here we go. Look at that. I'm just cutting that bird free. And again, trying to get all the meat off of that. And if you know anything about fascia, there's more fascia there. That's actually where the skin connects. And work that down there because we're trying to preserve that skin. And then I think we are completely free. Okay, so we've now deboned the turkey. So you can see most of this, there's a little bit of meat on there. There is really not much meat. You got a little bit of glute left on each side here. But we've pulled that completely off of the bone. All the way around, that's going in here with the rest of these for sauce. So, there. that honestly didn't take too long, and I anticipated that taking much longer than it did. So now really all we're left with is trying to work through the remaining bones that we've got. But again, those are tib, fib, femur, radial, ulna. I'm gonna just dump a little bit of this turkey juice as it's starting to melt off. Trying to make sure that we're not splashing anything like that out onto our counter here. The one thing that I would say that I think this will really do is if you can throw this in the fridge for a couple hours, let it cure, throw a bunch of salt on it so it'll dry out all these different pieces. That's what you want to do. So we got dark meat, light meat, okay. So we're gonna go basically, we're gonna follow the path of the bone right through here, okay? So I'm gonna just unwrap this, okay, to that joint right in here. Gotta get that started. And then I'm going to go the opposite direction, same thing. And we're trying to cut all the way down to the bone. In reality, what we're trying to do is make one cut, gets us down to the bone, and then we're going to unwrap that bone capsule all the way around. Bones are really what inhibit your ability to cook meat quickly. So if you've ever done like a T-bone, for example, done a T-bone where you've got a big old steak bone right in the middle, cook it medium rare, everything else looks great, pull it out, and what do you have? The meat right along the bone could be still ice cold. Just, you know, nature of the beast, that's how that happens. And so in this sort of scenario, you have this cavernous opening. You have the chest of the turkey where you've got to raise the internal temperature of that area in order to get to a point where you're all of the meat is at the appropriate or the safe temperature, right? So it cooks really unevenly. So the benefit of being able to take this all the way down to the bone here and to remove the bone from this scenario is to be enabling much more even cooking. I'm massacring some of this here, but I do want to get in here. Boy, tib fib, not want to lose any meat, do you? And you got a bunch of ligaments, tendons in here. Achilles tendon, we all know what that is, right? Okay, there we go. Now we're starting to get it off the bone. We can get in here, start making some cuts right down to it. I'm actually gonna cut that out. All right, and I'm gonna take a bunch of these ligaments and I'm gonna pull them out, okay? Come on. There we go. There we go. Coming loose. And again, like once you've done one, the pattern for the next one is the same thing. So I honestly think with a lot of these that once you get it down to a certain point, down to this point, you can literally pull most of that back rather than, you know, cutting it back or trimming it back. Now you got to take a bunch of these ligaments where the muscles connect here, okay? And you do have to break that loose. Okay, it's got to come off of its connection point to the bone. So that's one of the things. And we're down now to this point where I'm going to get in here and trim it off of that. It's like a joint capsule. If you know anything about human anatomy, then you know what the joint capsule looks like, you know how it functions. It wraps all of the stuff around the knee. But I mean, that's a pretty clean bone for cutting something. And that's all dark meat, and that's all gonna lay down. So now that's a uniform thickness. Look at that. That is crazy. That's ligament. Tendon. Okay, so we've got all this dark meat here. We're gonna work on this second bit of dark meat here. Ooh, that was nice. Good first cut. Good first cut, gets us right to the bone. I'm shaving right along the bone there. That's separating. That's really, really nice. Really nice. I'm telling you, you do it once, and then the second time, you're not the same person. You're not doing the same thing. I mean, it's just so much easier once you actually understand where all the landmarks are in regards to the anatomy of the bird. And once you start, because if you think about it, your connection points are ligaments, right? Connect muscle to bone. Or what is that? Bone to bone, and then tendons, sorry. Connect muscle to bone. So once you've got a couple landmarks like that, I mean, really, I'm shaving this bone down to my knee joint and thinking about the direction that I'm taking the tissue as I'm working it off the bird, rather than thinking about, you know, the end goal or like where I actually want to get to. So this gives me my opening on the back side of this, and then I'm going to take that and I'm going to work from this direction down to the opening that we're trying to get to, and I'm going to use the bone as my guide. Got my knee joint right here, and I'm working tissue off the bone as quickly as possible. And again, using bone as guide, peeling all of that back off of that bone. Okay. I'm going to open that capsule on the back side here. Work down. Okay, and then I'm just going to take my knife, I'm going to slide it through on the back side here, try to connect those two different positions so that I can work some of that tissue right here off of the bird. Cutting through that Achilles tendon. Okay, pop that all loose, got all of those tendons and ligaments hanging out back there. Allows me to get into the back end of the bone. Pop all that loose. Mike Thorson says, happy Thanksgiving. Good to hear from him. The old coach at the University of Mary, one of the few coaches that did recruit me out of high school. Coincidentally enough, I ended up going to a place that didn't recruit me, which is South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, just because the guy that was coaching there was, we had a personal relationship. He was a good friend of mine. He was in my, taught my Sunday school. I'm going to pop this loose. There's not a bunch of meat there that I'm not trying to fight with. Just pop that joint there. Cut through one side, cut through the other side, break that loose. Going to go over here. Same thing. I'm going to open that up. That webbing through here is what they call a wing. Okay. That pops through. Not breaking any bones. We're just taking the joint, loosening that up, getting that through. So now we're down to the only bones left in this whole bird are going to be right in this. Well, I did leave scapula over here. I think I can pop that loose in a second here. Stupid me. Okay. Okay, scapula loose. Okay, the only bone that we're left with is your drum on each side, okay? So again, I'm taking skin on this side, taking that all the way to bone. Okay, once I've got all the way down to bone, I'm just gonna work around this joint. So I know the shape of the joint, and I know what's happening there, and I'm trying to peel this back along my bone. I'm gonna open this up down here so that peels back even easier. And I know that it looks like maybe I'm being a little bit cavalier with my knife skills here, but again, I'm keeping my hands in an area that's super, super safe. So there's nothing to worry about. Now, if you had a toddler, this is probably not the piece of cooking prep that I would involve them in. I would probably wait till they're a little bit older. But even then, you know, like as I was a younger child, I was around my parents as they broke down animals that my dad would hunt and harvest and bring back to the house. So instead of having an aversion to all of this, looking at it as something that is disgusting, okay, I look at it as something that I grew up with, something that I'm used to, something that I'm very comfortable with, and something that I really understand. So we got last piece of ligaments there, cutting that loose. We're about down to the last piece of the bird. It's going to be this side. And again, remember, we're working from exposed bone. We're trying to further expose it all the way down. Got a little bit of skin here that I'm going to cut loose. It's going to open this up for me. And we're going to work all the way down. Get that skin loose. I can even just slide my blade down along the backhand side of that bone and follow it in the opposite direction. That allows me to cut all of that loose. Okay. And then really I can just take it, get in behind it, and release some of that tissue then there off of the bone. So then again, we're just working the bone all the way down to that joint, okay, which we know is down in that shoulder. Well, there's no joint anymore, but we're working down to the head of that bone, which is your ulna. You have your radius, radius, ulna, and your femur, and can't think of the upper one right now as I'm trying to work through all of this. But there we go. Most of that flayed off. I think the last thing I'm working on is just the backhand side of this. That cuts loose there. And then I got a little bit through here. Ta-da! There is your deboned turkey. So if you stayed with me, there's one person that stayed with me through all of this. The last step, and I don't think you can see this super, super well. Maybe I'll move the tray up here. As you can see all of those tendons and ligaments, okay, that are down in the dark meat. Next step that we're going to, I'm gonna go grab a pair of pliers and I'm just gonna pull those out. So that is the next step. I'm gonna run outside, I'll be right back. Gotta get a pair of pliers, clean my hands off. Paul, you wanna come open this door handle for me, please? Unless you want turkey juice all over you. Or Kara, whoever. Completely deboned.
Where's the meat for the table? Is it? You wanna pull it out? Yeah.
All right, back are two different alternatives. I have what are called channel locks. Okay, got channel locks. And then I've got these, which I think would be very interesting. These actually lock down on whatever it is and provide you a clamp. So let's go ahead, we're gonna get in here. We're gonna grab this first one. say it so cavalier, like that's so easy to do. So that might be the last time I use this, but all you're doing is popping that loose, pulling that out. It's gonna change the texture. I'm gonna go ahead and use my channel locks now. Oh wow, that was pretty easy. But again, this is gonna change the final texture of what you're actually cutting here. Which that one I'm actually gonna trim loose. I don't know whether that is actually Achilles tendon or what that is, but that is robust. Came out. Now, what are these tendons made of? Any guesses? From the two people that are watching, what are tendons made of? Guesses in the chat. If you've ever made Jell-O, it is this material. So what could it be? That's right, it's collagen. So we are removing collagen from the bird. But collagen is what makes up all connective tissue. Okay, so for example, if you hurt your, the common thing that everybody hurts is a hamstring, right? You pull a hamstring. What remodels all of that? Your body sends collagen to the site to remodel the tissue. And that is what connects the tissues. So those are all removed. Okay, didn't lose much material there. Here's a huge one I see hanging out. So take him and pop him loose. I did lose a little bit of meat there. I'm gonna leave that one then. Okay. I don't know if maybe these should be colder. I am having some difficulty leaving a lot of the the meat, some of this scenario. It doesn't mean we're losing a ton of it, but we've lost a turkey burger's worth. So this is the part that Adam makes look really, really easy and very simple. It's not hard per se, but it is not easy as well on the other end of that. There's some physical work that's actually occurring, and I am trying to figure out how do we not lose quite as much meat as I'm losing. And part of that is what breaks down over time when you cook things low and slow is collagen is what is breaking down. So you're breaking down, removing collagen from whatever meat when you cook it for a long time at very low temperatures. But if you take something like this bird, for example, and you run it at 450 degrees for an hour, there's not enough time for that collagen to begin to break down. And so you may end up with a tougher cut of meat. So there we go, removed a bunch of that. I'm gonna flip that completely over on my tray. Tuck all of that in. Okay, now that is generally the same height and shape. May not look super palatable at the moment, but that is some really, 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 really nice stuff. Next step, I'm gonna take and grab a bunch of salt in order to dry out that skin. I'm gonna pour off whatever excess moistures come out of the bird. Okay. I am then also going to take my paper towels here and I'm gonna blot this off because what we want is we want dry skin because dry skin crisps up better. I am then gonna take this And we are gonna put this into the refrigerator. So we're gonna dry brine this, okay, with a little bit of salt on both sides. So again, I'm trying to remove as much moisture as I can. And by salting this, that'll also help remove a bunch of that moisture. Good thing I've got a bunch of Morton salt. Literally, I'm gonna take this, put a bunch of salt in my hand, and then I'm just gonna distribute that very liberally here again onto the bird. You gotta remember like how much actual tissue exists, because anytime that you go and you throw a bunch of salt on something like this, people are like, oh man, that's a lot of salt. Well, if you think about it, most of the cuts that you're gonna get off of a bird are gonna be a cross section of that bird. So you may get very, very little salt in the end result, okay? You're not gonna be getting a super, super salty bird. I'm gonna flip this over. Do you mind throwing a little salt in my hand here? All right, there we go. And same thing here on this side. Just gonna salt that. And their flavor is one of the reasons that we're doing this as well. I'm not gonna put any pepper on it at this point because what we're trying to do again is a dry brine on this bird. So we're just trying to get some salt on it. I wanna put the meat side down, okay? I wanna make sure that my skin side is up. I'm gonna hit it with just teeny tiny bit more salt. And you can see that in this scenario, we've got dark meat, light meat, separated. That's gonna be our final cut. So we're gonna cut here, we're gonna cut there. We're gonna put those on separate pans. They're gonna be roasted at different times because they're gonna cook differently. Dark meat is gonna be done sooner. Light meat is gonna be done a little bit longer, and part of that is just the size of the actual meat on the bird. So, again, we're down to, well, I don't know how much time I've spent on this, probably 20 minutes, maybe 20, 30 minutes. Or maybe I've gone into a time warp and it's been hours, but I don't think it's been that long. Again, I'm just gonna put a little bit of salt here on the very, very end of this. And remember, you've probably never had a bite of meat that didn't have some salt on it, that you walked away from where you're like, that was so good. Salt is, as they say, the spice of life. So now I'm gonna take this, and I'm gonna throw this back into my fridge. It's in a pan, and I'm gonna let that sit for as long as I can. If we were gonna eat at 5 o'clock, you know, I'm gonna start that cooking at 4 o'clock. But really the only thing that is left for me, and I'm just cleaning up salt here. Remember, we were self-contained in a pan, but just to be safe, we'll go through here and disinfect this surface. But you know, really, that's pretty much it. So a little bit of prep goes a long way. All of that is prepped down. So our next step is just to make sure that our accoutrements or the sides are all ready to go. I'm gonna wash some things up and maybe start a gravy right now because I've got some of those giblets. I got that neck that I can cook down to produce some gravy if I want. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I've never been live before. Never had the opportunity to do that. You know, they've always required you to have basically to be monetized to be able to be live. So again, hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it's a long style format. We're coming up on 50 minutes right now. Leave some comments below. Happy Thanksgiving.